You know, a couple waiting for Yeshua, there's few things they wouldn't do. Avoida, working on themselves, brachas from Gedolim, schools, doctor's visits, of course, Tehillim, Tevilah. What do you do when nothing seems to work? You've been to all the Gedolim, making yourself vulnerable to all types of gabayim along the way. You said Tehillim, done all kinds of creative schools. I remember at one point when I was walking towards yeshiva, a certain individual who was married considerably after us. I remember he was making a bris in a few days. I remember he was on the way out, he was rolled down his car window and gave me the good old, gunshot and wink, like that. And he said, "Hey, Dickstein, kvater," like that. So I, of course, I shot the gun right back at him. I said, "Kvater's my middle name." Needless to say, we didn't do it at that bris. I didn't, yeah. So you've been to the doctors, and still nothing. You cried your eyes out in Tevilah, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, at all the Kfarim, at the Kaisel, Maras Mechbela, Kever Rachel. What do? As I'm sure most of you know, Yom Tovim could be very hard. The obvious one that comes to mind, of course, is Simchas Torah, though not to the exclusion of any others. Simchas Torah for me in yeshiva was always a highlight of my year, until it wasn't. I remember the first time I got Kol HaNa'arim. I remember I was sitting in the Beis Medrash. Obviously, it was a little emptier. The other one was a little tired. And I was waiting for my turn. I remember I was sitting with my brother. Somehow it came out that I was going to be getting Kol HaNa'arim. I told him it was supposed to be a skula for children. He said to me, "You know what else is a skula for children? Giving your brother a hug." I still haven't found the makor for that, or many other schools for that matter, but I did appreciate it. As far as I can remember, this was the first time I ever did anything in public, aside from doing kvater a number of times. And it was the first time that I ever did anything publicly that drew attention to our situation. I was really choked up when I said the brachas after the kriya. And the Baal Bas from the yeshiva, who I was very close to, noticed this, gave me a hug. After which I received a big hug from my Rosh Yeshiva. I'll never forget either of those embraces as long as I live. When I was little, my favorite song was Hamalach HaGoyel. Just loved to sing it when I went to sleep. It remains one of my favorite songs until today. So naturally, when they started singing, I was crying, davening really. Hamalach HaGoel.
Yeah.
V'shem avoisai, v'shem avoisai, Avraham v'Yitzchak, v'yitnu l'Aroi, v'yitnu l'Aroi, v'kerev ha'aretz, v'shem avoisai, v'shem avoisai, v'Avraham v'Yitzchak, v'yitnu l'Aroi, v'yitnu l'Aroi, v'kerev ha'aretz. The first time we ever heard about the Shas-a-Thon was at the ATIME Chanukah Melova Malka. That first event was not easy, but you know, Chanukah as a whole could be a very difficult time. Every year I would stand by the candles, gazing at the reflection of the candles and myself, created by the darkened window as I sang Ma'oz Tzor. Getting up to the final stanza, Chasoif, where we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us the ultimate salvation and bring us to the final redemption, was always extremely difficult. Ki aruch olanu ha-Yeshua, b'ein kates imei hara. Yeshua's taken a long time to come. There's no end to the bitter days. I remember how I would walk back to yeshiva, continue learning with my chavrusa after lighting. I'd pass by this house with a big window facing the street and straight into their dining room, and of course that's where they would light their licht. And the whole family would gather with all their menorahs together. I couldn't imagine anything in the world more beautiful than that. I can't describe to you how badly I wanted that for myself. Imagine for a second spending thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars for medical treatment, and you don't even get a chance to try. For one reason or another, you missed your window of opportunity, and just like that, you're right back to step one. And it will be weeks, even months, until you can try again. Imagine that disappointment. Let that sink in for a second. The hopes that you had, how much went into it. Imagine that happens over and over again. I remember one time in particular, it happened on a Friday afternoon. We arrived home from the doctor with not too much time to spare before Shabbos. I was particularly broken. We both felt terrible for ourselves. And my wife was trying to give me chizuk, a little role reversal, but whatever little time we had left as we scrambled to get the house in order and ready for Shabbos. I walked home from shul that Friday night exhausted, alone. I tried to think what I could possibly do or say that could bring the spirit of Shabbos back into our home that we so desperately needed. I got home that night, and before I picked up the cup of wine, I told my wife the following. I said, when Klal Yisrael stood by our Sinai, because Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu to tell the Kohanim, Hagbel esahar v'kidashtai. Kohanim should recognize their place, stand around the mountain, and create a boundary around it. Likewise, when Moshe Rabbeinu first encountered Hashem, he was told, Shalna alecha me'al raglecha ki hamakom asher ata omed sham admas kodesh. Take off your shoes, because the place where you're standing, there, it's holy. Mashgiach Revolbi, explains that Kedusha can be when a person recognizes that where they are standing, where they're holding in their ruchnius, whatever matzav they're in, is exactly where they're supposed to be. They're not supposed to be in anyone else's situation. Hamakom asher ata oimed sham admas koideshu. That place where you are, that difficult, lonely, often embarrassing place, is exactly where you're supposed to be. That's Kedusha. Pleasant or not, this is where Hashem wants us to be. With that, I picked up the cup, b'simcha, and began to recite Kiddush. This incident reminded me of another story which I shared with my wife as well, that I heard from one of my Rebbeim, Rabbi Yitzchak Noble. I apologize if I get any of the details incorrect. Pinchas Eliyahu Spiegel, the Ostrov of Kalashina Rebbe from the Bronx, I believe, had a son, Elchanan, whose twin brothers, the Rav, the Shtibel in Cedarhurst, and he was a sheikh. And one time he was driving with 4 other sheikhim in the car, and they were in a horrible accident. All 5 of them were killed. And the Sulitzer Rebbe, together with the doctor, and they went to go tell Pinchas Eliyahu that the news. So he responded at first. Apologize if I get the details incorrect, but he responded at first with a little krechs, and then he stopped himself and he said, "There's 2 levels." He says, "Vayidai ma'aron." There's the vayidai ma'aron, there's accepting it, but then there's leman yizamerach chavoid v'lo yidaim, to be able to sing through the challenges, to sing b'simcha. We say Hashem. Hashem is the name of Racham, and we say Elokai. Hashem Elokai is the name of Din. Hashem Elokai li olam oideka. No matter what it is, I'll always thank you. Last year we participated in the Shas-a-Thon for the 3rd time. I told Rabbi Rosen then that my wife and I were going to be moving to California to open up a kiruv program on one of the campuses there. It was time for a change, time for us to be givers, to get out, and to feel that we were making a difference. Rabbi Rosen, of course, didn't believe me. He said, "You're joking, right?" I finally was able to convince him that it was real, but I said, "No problem, we'll open up a branch in LA." It didn't even occur to me then that there could be any reality other than the one that we were in. We moved a couple of weeks after the Shas-a-Thon. Shortly after we arrived in California, we found out that we were expecting. It made no sense. Well, I mean, it made perfect sense, but we went into the hospital, finally on the 2nd day of Rosh Hashanah. Baruch Hashem, 3 days later, my wife and I were blessed with 3 baby boys. They were in the NICU, in the hospital, for 6.5 weeks. And about 7.5 weeks after they were born, we were able to do the brisim all together on the same day, under one roof. We were zeicha to have Rabbi Rosen, the father of the Time family, there, and to be sandik for our son, Gabriel Yoina. when there's more than one bris being done, there's a shaila whether or not you make one bracha for all of them or to make a separate bracha for each one. So what we do is we create a hefsek in between each one, so that way, according to everyone, you would make, in this case, 3 brachas. The break in between was very emotional for me, though I'm not sure everyone there knew why, because as a pause, everyone together, they all sang a Malach HaGoyel. And in fact, the first Yantiv that they were home with us, was for Chanukah. And as I sang Chasayf, I looked in that same window, and this time, I was able to shed tears of joy. I'd like to say a few thank yous, and in no particular order. And I already, of course, thanked our wonderful families at the Brisses for the Brissim for their amazing love and support, being there as best as they could through very, very difficult times. First, I'd like to thank the superb, unbelievable Shas-a-Thon team, led by the extremely devoted, time fasting, Elie Wexler, everyone, everyone is amazing. Thank you so much. The thought, the preparation, attention to detail, and care for every single loimed is evident in the results of the Shas-a-Thon every year. As they say, the proof is in the pudding. Secondly, thank you, big thank you, somewhere here, to Moshe Fisher. The unbelievable director of ATIME. He has become a very, very dear friend. Every couple's pain is his pain, and every couple's simcha is his simcha. He pulls out all the stops and cuts no corners when it comes to taking care of the ATIME couples. Thank you to Rabbi and Rebbetzin Rosen, Rabbi Koenig, Vivian Moskowitz, and the entire ATIME staff for directing, assisting, guiding, and supporting us to this point. I know they say ATIME stands for a Torah Infertility Medium of Exchange, I believe, but I think it actually stands for angels totally impersonating mankind every day. I know we say it every year. I just want to take a second. To those who haven't experienced it, Rabbi Koenig has literally was there at any moment of the day, anything we needed, whatever it was, he was there with his encyclopedic knowledge, with his kind and caring support. No amount of thanks is sufficient for him. I say it every year, but I don't think it's possible to understate how much that's true. And second to last, I'd like to say thank you to all the loimdim. When I walked into the base medrash this morning, I really wanted to give each and every one of you a hug. I really did. It would have taken much too long, and I had 10 blot to learn, so I didn't. But the offer is on the table. I can never say for sure, but people do ask me what it was that gave us the schus to have triplets. But as many of you know, last year was my 3rd Shas-a-Thon. I'd like to share with you something that we didn't plan, and I didn't tell you Rabbi Rosen yet. Sorry. But the gematria of the names of our sons, Aryeh, Yitzchak, Shmuel, Simcha, and Gabriel Yoina, is B'schus HaTorah HaKadosha. If I was holding the mic, I would drop it right now. I can honestly say, I don't know where we would be without all of you. Finally, last but most certainly not least, my ATIME brothers and sisters. There is nothing I wouldn't do for each and every one of you. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but based on a Gemara in Shavuos I learned my first year in the Shas-a-Thon, the Maharal says that in the Bria, it's mukhrach, it has to be that any time there's a lack in any area, there is a mila in another. It cannot be any other way. Thank you for being the most kind, the most sensitive, the most thoughtful, amazing people I ever have met. Thank you for letting me into your lives and for being a part of ours. Again, I wish all of you a tremendous mazel tov, and thank you, thank you, thank you.